Welcome to another episode of the Chronic Comeback podcast. Today I am in a meeting room in a co-working space here in Bali. If it already sounds quite echoey, so I apologise, but it is what it is. I was keen today to just record an episode myself. Unfortunately, I do have coffee again. I have just got it. I had a bad night's sleep last night. It's like I know that these episodes are coming, and so it's like I'm not going to be sleep well, so I won't feel as good. But that's okay, and that's also another lesson I'm learning. When the whole thing about being perfect, like if I don't get an amazing night's sleep, that doesn't mean that I'm going to set myself back. Or I think I'd have this thing of like, okay, well, if I haven't slept well, obviously if I don't sleep well, 20 nights in a row, or if I sleep terribly 20 nights in a row, that's going to have a pretty bad impact. But yeah, I was listening to this guy on a podcast the other day, and he's this really successful CEO, and he was a really healthy guy actually, but he was just like, I don't sleep that well, and I'm okay with that. And I mean, he goes to sleep at like 2 a.m. or something, wakes up at 9. I couldn't do that, but I just thought it was interesting. Like his mentality was just like, and I remember he was talking about coffee as well. And he was like, I drink 5 cups of coffee a day. Again, I don't want to do that. But he was just like, I just feel caffeine's just one of the best things ever invented. And I was just like, I feel like that's just a state of mind he's in there. Anyway, wow, that was not on the agenda today. Sorry, massive detour, whatever. Anyway, I keep having a lot of questions, but then also these questions and kind of what I'm going through makes me think of things, and then I think, oh, they'd be good to share. So I was almost going to do like whole episodes on different things, but then I just thought I'd try and just like sum up like a few things that I feel like I'm learning at the moment and thinking. And I just need to say at the beginning of this episode, any of the stuff that I ever say, one, it's not medical advice. So, consult whoever you're speaking to. And, I'm certainly no expert. So, but two, it's so individual. I feel like it is individual, but I also feel like, I don't know, it is. Some things are individual, but then other things I do think they apply to everyone. But anyway, people have asked me about exercise and how can I don't ever watch my episodes back, by the way, so I can't really remember exactly what I said in the last one. But I don't think I talked about like flare-ups, and people were asking me like, how do you make sure you don't get crashes? Maybe I did. But I don't think I said this. I think it's important to know that flare-ups and crashes are inevitable when you do these things. For me, anyway, that's what I think. That's what's happened for me. And what happened previously was that I would just completely stop and give up. The whole point of like, whenever you change something, whenever you do something new, whenever there's anything, a big change in your life and you're going through difficulty, that has to happen, and you need to go into that realizing it. The important thing is that you don't stop and give up at that point. The other important thing is that you're not pushing, as I think I mentioned in the last episode. So the whole process, I've realized, is like rebuilding your trust in your body, your nervous system, and rebuilding that relationship. Because right now, before all of this, like my relationship with my nervous system and my body was broken, and it was separate. Like I was very separate from it. There were two different things, and they weren't working together, and they're still not fully, but you're building that trust, almost like, it's a bad analogy, but I guess if a partner's been unfaithful or something like that, and they're getting back together and they're rebuilding that trust, can't happen on day one. It needs to happen. What a terrible analogy. Sorry. It just needs to happen step by step and bit by bit. And that's not going to I think I've said it a lot of times, like progress isn't linear. I think the important thing is to not be like so afraid of these crashes. And I think the reason why people have a crash is because that day they've gone into it with fear. And I realized that with whenever I had like a real flare up and any of that stuff, a lot of the time it was because I'd gone in with such fear about that, or I'd maybe tried to push a bit too hard. So yeah, if you go into it knowing that's going to happen, it kind of makes it feel a little bit better. And the other thing as well is like, take a long period of time and say, I'm going to judge it after that period of time. I'm going to stick to this plan and I'm going to judge it after this period of time, whatever you do, but particularly when it comes to exercise. But what I will say as well is that unless you're very knowledgeable in a particular area, like I've done exercise my whole life. It's been a big part of my life, but I'm no expert. So I've worked with someone who's not, I think people are asking me if he's a specialist in CFS, a specialist in, no, he's not in any of those things, which in a way is probably better, but he definitely did have he's like a personal trainer, but like more of kind of like a holistic personal trainer who, I don't ever see him in person now. I did before. It's pretty expensive. So, but we just do it remotely now. And he's in Bali. I'm actually going to see him today, just for an update. But he knew about kind of fight or flight. He knew about like your nervous system. And I feel like he knew enough. I think the important thing is to work with someone in exercise. It's not just I had a PT once and we were just kind of, it was just such a generic lift weights and hit mitts and stuff like boxing. And it was just, that's not what you need, because they don't have any understanding. There needs to be an understanding that you're not just like a normal person going to work out. You're someone who needs a very graded approach back to exercise, and it needs that person. So how I found this guy, I just looked for someone who'd worked prehab. I think it's called prehab. So people who've got injuries and it's before they go, and I can't remember, people who specialize working with injuries, but those kinds of people will also have worked with people with like, chronic stuff. He'd work with people with like fatigue, like extreme fatigue and other, I think maybe lupus or something like that. He'd worked with people before, but anyway, so that's that. And then the important thing to mention as well is that I'd gone, and I think, I didn't say this. If I did, I'm sorry if I'm repeating stuff, but I went months and months without any sort of like big improvements. And they were so slight, some of the improvements, that it would be understandable if I gave up. But then it's actually only really the last 3 to 4 months that I've seen like really big improvements, and what that has done. And that makes sense, right? It's just like everything, you're building trust, and it's a bit of like a snowball effect, and then suddenly the bigger stuff starts to happen. And that's all I'm going to say on the exercise stuff, because I feel like I talked about it a lot on the last one. So then I didn't talk about, I don't think, is I'm not going to announce each time I take a sip of a coffee, because I feel like I did that last time. And my girlfriend who edits the podcast was like, yeah, that was too much. So I'm just going to drink it. And those who are listening, you're just going to hear pauses. And this is the last time I'm going to talk about it. Otherwise it goes cold. And I hate lukewarm, cold coffee. I have to have piping hot, and this is not piping hot at the moment, so I blame you guys. I blame you all. Anyway, so I feel like a lot of people have had on the podcast, we all have been told, and I haven't really heard this line of thinking before, so maybe because it's wrong, but the masculine push side of someone is like the bad thing, and this is what got us here. And for a long time, until very recently, I believed it was my masculine tendencies that got me here. And actually, there is an element of truth to that, for sure. I've got a very extreme kind of all or nothing personality, very kind of like ambitious personality. And that kind of gets me maybe just, causing me to live a very extreme life, causing me to push myself when I shouldn't, etc., etc. We all know that side of the story. However, because I started to believe and fully buy into this masculine, this is what got me here. I started to go down a far more spiritual path, which I still am down. I still fully believe in. That's a whole different thing. But I was like, wow, I need to let go of that side of me. That's like a toxic side of me. I need to kind of not be that person. And I just naturally come to the table with a lot of like masculine energy. And that's not me saying, oh, I'm just, masculine guy. It just is what it is. That's just how I am. And whilst I definitely need more feminine energy in my existence. And that's not to say more women, as in I need more, of that side of me. But then by not embracing what I really am, I began to view myself as weak and therefore broken. And I started to lose a lot of what made me who I was. And because of this and this viewing myself as weak, I definitely viewed myself as weak until very recently, and definitely viewed myself as broken. I'd constantly say to myself, my body feels like it's like trapped in an 80-year-old's body. I'd constantly say that to myself. That's not the talk of someone who has full belief in the strength of their body, etc., etc. And because of this, I never truly believed in my body's ability to recover and get stronger itself. And it's actually funny, I went and had this DNA test. I'd done a DNA test ages ago. And I remember I went to see this person who was specialised in chronic health, and all they did was just focus on these fucked up genes I had, like some of these ones. Because a lot of people, some people will go and they'll have most people have, is it defective genes? No, a variant where that could cause you to be more likely to get cancer or more likely to get MS or something like that. And they would just focus on this makes sense, you are like you are, blah, blah. I just came away from that thing thinking, okay, well, of course I'm fucked. Yeah, I have no chance. Then you feel sorry for yourself and you go in this cycle. And I know, people talk about this MHTFR gene. It's not the one. But I got told I had that gene. And then I did this other DNA test and I couldn't see it in there. Had some other funky ones. But then I had all these other ones that were like, actually, it's a really, if people are interested in this test, I got it as part of this. I was doing this sleep coaching thing, which I think I talked about before, and it was part of that. But I think it might be like $400, so it's not cheap. But I got it as part of this sleep thing where I got an aura ring and everything as well. But it even went as far to say on this DNA test is whether you have a tendency to be a good dancer or not. And I always thought I was going to be I'm a great dancer. And said I wasn't. So I was a little bit disappointed with that. But so many things about like being, it was talking about like I have a tendency to be better at strength training. And I was like, so I actually, just as an example, like that. So I'm actually deep down, that is something that my genes, I'm more capable of doing that than your average person. So then why am I viewing myself as weak? And that was a little bit of a change for me. And I thought it was quite interesting. Like just by seeing that, I was like, okay. Of course, there was stuff in there. There was stuff in there that says that I have a tendency to get injured more than other people. My ligaments are more I don't know, whatever it was, but I chose not to focus on those things because that doesn't mean that definitely happens. So it's kind of up to, we're all given good and bad genes, in my opinion, and it's just kind of down to us which one we up and down regulate. And look, so for me, I know I need to embrace who I am and what makes me good. And that is the masculine side of things. However, it's a clear however, there's a fine line because it's quite easy to just slip back into. I did it yesterday. I was meant to have a day off from the gym yesterday, and I was like, oh, I'll go and I'll just go and skip for a little while. And I was in the middle of it, and I was like, this is the same thing. Like, why am I not giving myself a day off? So, and at least I'm catching that, and I gave myself credit for it, and I'm catching that, and I'll go into like what's next for me soon. But I still can't deny that there's too much of an imbalance between masculine and feminine energy. I don't want to diminish the masculine side, but I need to address that other side. And by the feminine, I'm talking about my ability to calm myself down, my ability to have that relaxation in my life, that ability to, counteract that other side of me. And that's something I need to cultivate. I don't need to diminish the other side. I need to cultivate the other side, the feminine side. And that makes sense. And so, yeah, I can't ignore what makes me me. I can't ignore what makes me good, but I need to make me better. So don't go back, go forward, Phil 2.0. Maybe it's probably more like 7.0, the amount of changes I'm trying to do. Yes, that's one thing. And I talked on the last podcast about the letting go of the need to be perfect, but I just wanted to talk about it a bit more, just because I've still got a suitcase full of supplements. Not a suitcase full of supplements, but I've got a lot of supplements with me, and I'm not taking any of them at the moment. But I've just thought to myself, why am I not throwing those away? I should throw those away, and I haven't. And I think that's an interesting thing, and I think I do need to, because I haven't been taking them. I think one thing is I've paid so much money that they're probably about £1,000 worth in there. But when I actually look at the good they were doing me, I certainly don't feel any different, and I'd say I feel better, and I'm not taking any. That's not to say supplements aren't good and can be good, but I personally feel like you have to be in the right frame of mind, and your body has to be in the right. I remember speaking to a lot of people. They did their brain retraining, or they did whatever they did, and then suddenly supplements started working for them. And anyway, I guess just going back to the need to be perfect. I mean, the amount of practitioners I started working with, and I'd get there, and on day one it would be a whole new list of supplements, whole new list of tests, and a whole new list of techniques. And then in my mind, I was like, oh my God, I don't do all of these things they're telling me to do, I can't get there. And how soul destroying is that? Like, for that. And I just don't have it in me to be able to be that diligent. And that's why, and I think maybe that is a men's thing. Like, I had a lot of people on the podcast, and really like type A female personalities, people who are really successful, and then they've got chronically ill, and then they've got themselves better through being this just absolute like machine, like being able to so dedicated in what they're doing each day. And I'm dedicated in kind of like a different way, maybe more of a disorganized way. And it would make me feel like I can't do that. And they're almost like, yeah, they're like the perfect patient of these practitioners that would have all this laundry list of things to do. And then I would feel bad because I'm like, well, am I not taking this seriously enough? Because I'm not able to do all these things. When it comes to supplements, I definitely, I took them for months and sometimes years on end. I guess I'm talking more about the techniques and the stuff like that. But I remember having alarms going off on my phone. I had a fucking, I mean, you probably all got this, a pill box where you take your pills at your different times, and I'd have it out with me and I'd be there with friends. And it's just like, so what would happen, like, if you didn't do that for a little period of time? And I'm not telling you to do this, I'm just saying what would happen. Because for me, I've done it almost by accident, really, that I had this break back in Europe this year, and I was moving about so much that I just thought, and I have done this at various different times, but I just thought, I'm going to eat well, really well when I can. I'm not going to just be eating shit, but I'm also not going to deprive myself in situations where it's going to make me feel bad. So when I was with friends, I wasn't drinking alcohol. I still don't really want to do that. I don't want to drink like a glass of wine or a glass of beer or whatever when everyone else is. That I don't actually care about that anymore, which is a huge shift for me. It was more just like when there are like events on or something like that, I want to be able to have a few drinks. But in terms of like coffee, I didn't even consciously actually just thought, oh no, do you know what? I'm going to start drinking coffee again. I was just so tired one day and I had a coffee after a year and a half of not drinking a coffee, and I was addicted again. But then after a month, I was like, I don't feel any worse. And I'm drinking coffee again. I like coffee. At the moment, I'm not doing parasite cleanses. I was doing those religiously. I'm not doing enemas at the moment. I was doing enemas religiously. My stomach doesn't feel. My stomach's still not great, but it doesn't feel worse. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Right now, actually, right this second, I'm drinking a coffee, which probably isn't great for your stomach, and it feels all right. So yeah, it's just like, why don't you, depending on how you are and how sensitive you are, why don't you try and let go of like one thing in a month? Maybe let go of two things, maybe let go of three things, and see how you feel after that month. And I'm not saying it will make you feel better, but if it doesn't make you feel worse, that's what it's just like. My mum's like in her late 70s now. She's got horrendous back pain, and I keep telling her that she needs to look at this whole mind body connection. Not having any of it, no chance. It's physical. She was just like, I just need better painkillers. So I was like, okay, well, how's that working out for you right now? She was like, well, I'm still in loads of pain. But I was like, you're taking loads of painkillers? Yeah. Okay. It's the same thing, isn't it? Like, we take all these things and yet it's almost like a crutch. Like, it's exactly like a crutch. Like, if I'm not taking them, then I'm not doing, I could be loads worse. But what about if you didn't take them? What about if you did? What about if you, once a week, you allowed yourself a slice of toast with some butter on? I'm not saying you do that every day, because I avoid gluten, I avoid dairy, but I do have those things. Did I have gluten? Yeah. I mean, at the moment, I'm pretty much I've had a slice of toast every day this week with a meal. But then the rest of the time, I'm eating. Yeah, I had rice. I was avoiding rice for fucking like years. I didn't have rice. So I don't know. Maybe give it a go. Maybe this is not me telling you to do it. If you feel comfortable in letting go of something and see how it feels, or just letting go of the need to be perfect in one area of your life. I believe and this goes back to like the feeling that your body's strong, etc., etc. We should all give our bodies more credit than we've been doing. Stop trying to have all of these things, these treatments, these things. And I've got an episode with Dan Ratner coming out, who is a chronic pain specialist. And he said, I was like, well, because I'd go for all these sports massages, and at the time I'd be like, oh yeah, it's doing good. And I'd come out and I just feel exactly the same. Or, you know, any of these treatments. And I'd say, are they bad for you? Because, you know, you're going in there and you're going in there with a mentality to fix you. And he said, well, is it moving you closer to doubt? And by that, he meant, are you doing it because you doubt the mind body connection and you believe that this is going to fix you, and it's into that like fix it mentality? And I was doing all of those things to do that. So if you're doing an enema, for example, things is difficult, right? I know loads of people are going to be listening to this. I actually kind of like enemas, not in a way like that, but like as in, I do believe it's doing a lot of good. I still do saunas now, and I still think they're all good. It's just the mentality. So all of these things are really good. It's the mentality that you're doing it with. And for me, I was doing it with a very bad mentality. So if you're doing it with a really good mentality, yeah, God, I feel bad now for saying let go of all those things, but maybe let go of the way you're doing them if you're doing it in such like a strict way. If you're doing it because you're nurturing your body and because you feel it will assist in your body's own ability rather than doing it for yourself, then I think that's different. I would assess the way your mindset is going into this, and just sort of give your body just more credit. It's so much more powerful than you currently believe that it is, because you probably believe that it's not at all. And don't wait for the next supplement to come along to solve all your problems. It's not going to be. I was always like, oh God, one more people recommend magnesium for me. That's the hidden thing, and the amount of things like, yeah, you know. People, it's really nice, you know, you'd have friends who'd read an article and then they'd say, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And I'd gone years with like, I'd order this, I'd order that, I'd take it. Nothing would happen because I was going in with the wrong mentality. And yeah, so I've got a number of other things kind of like that's on my mind. A lot of people message me and they say, you know, is what you're doing working for, would it work for CFS? Or, you know, people comment on them and, you know, they'll comment with their particular, what they have. And for me, for a long time, I was always looking at stuff with Lyme for a long time, but then mold was like the big thing for me, because these were the two big things that I had been told were my issues. When I stopped, and this podcast is what did it for me, when I stopped looking at Lyme specific things, mold specific things, and just focused on the fact that I needed my body to be able to get rid of these things or deal with these things or heal these things, then that's a huge shift for me. And I would just, because if you're constantly looking for something that specifically helps your specific diagnosis, you're identifying with that diagnosis, in my opinion. And I feel like that's one of the worst things you can do, just identifying with that specific diagnosis, because that's who you are. And if you instead focus on the fact that you have, I think it's Two Purple Carrots, a practitioner that I worked with for a little while, who is great, by the way. And if I ever say I work with a practitioner, just because I didn't get better through that doesn't mean that they're not good. I've taken things from all of them. And she just said, you don't just have one thing, you have all the things. And I always thought that was just I was like, yeah, that's fucking true. I do have all the things. But then that can be either really overwhelming or just like, okay, but I won't have all the things, or I will be able to deal with all the things once my body's able to function normally or better. And that's what I feel like I am trying to do. My body is a system that needs to work more efficiently than it has been doing. And a lot of that is controlled by what's going on up here. So, yeah, please try to, as much as you can, and I'm only going on my experience, let go of like the labels as much and try to focus more on, you know, your body being able to work effectively itself. And it just goes back to, before you do anything, before you do an enema, before you do, and I wished I'd just looked at this initially, before you do any, take a supplement, are you doing the simple things first? So I had someone, a friend messaged me the other day, he started to have issues with mold, and he's looking to see a practitioner, and he's a guy who likes his alcohol. He's a guy who works really hard, pretty much who I was before. And he's like, well, you know, what? And I can sense he's going to go down that path where he's going to try all these treatments, but he's not going to sort out the simple things first. Are you sleeping? Are you sleeping well? Are you looking at the food you're eating in terms of like, are you eating a healthy diet? Not necessarily saying being really strict. Are you looking at your stress levels, like your mental health? And are you, with Dr. Cat talking about, are you doing something you love? Like, are you looking after your kind of like emotional health in that respect? If you're not looking after these like key kind of things, and there's probably a couple of other things, before you do all of those things, I feel like that's a mistake. One, they're a lot easier to look at. They're free. Which is important when you've got chronic health issues, because nothing's free. Then I feel like if you just did that for 3 months and focused on that, even if you just focused on sleep. I remember Julie, who I had on, so I can't remember her handle right now. I know exactly who she is, but I'm going to look her up right now because she's brilliant. Julie, yeah, I thought it was Julie with Joy, but I didn't want to say that. So Julie with Joy, Julie Morin, I think her name is. Yeah. When I had her on, she was just like, I just focused on my sleep. I focused on my sleep. I wanted to get that nailed. And that's all she did for a little while. And I was just thought, wow, that just makes so much sense. It's so simple. And yet people don't do it. So, you know, what is it for you? So are you doing the simple things first? I feel like I'm a bit all over the place today. And I'm not sure whether this is a great episode, because I feel like I'm just throwing loads of aggressive advice at people, but hopefully it is. Maybe I will have to watch this back. But something else which has been like pretty amazing for me is changing my environment. So coming to Bali, someone asked about it. Maybe I should do an episode talking about Bali. But when you come to Bali, there's a whole heap of stuff you need to think about. Like being in moldy places, which I'm in at the moment, which I'm having to deal with. People are getting sick. I got food poisoning here. I got pretty much the flu here. There's always going to be a bit like what I said about, there's always going to be a cost, and there's always going to be something you have to deal with. But I feel like I was getting thrown that stuff on purpose by the whole universe that likes to test you. But when I say change your environment, I don't necessarily mean move. You could move. If you can work remotely, I would suggest for anyone to go and try and do 3 months somewhere, 6 months somewhere, whatever. But is it changing your job? Is it just going to an event where you're speaking to new people? Who are the people you speak to at the moment? Can you speak to different people? Like, who are your friends? I'm not saying don't be friends with them, but can you make friends in a different area of your life? Do something that scares you, something that like, and if that is, you know, getting back to exercise, just do something different. Oh my God, I've forgotten her. Lindsay Mitchell's course. sorry, I've had a coffee. I'm really tired. I've forgotten the name of the course, but she talks about pattern interrupt, and she talks about brushing your teeth with your left hand or your right hand, whichever hand you are, and that doing something that is interrupting your pattern has been key for me. And I've been doing that, like, I guess, almost subconsciously, but then very intentionally in the last couple of years. And I think that's been really important for me. Finally, I was thinking about something the other day, and it's a really interesting mindset switch to have to try to go through. For a long time, I didn't believe recovery was possible. And I was trying desperately to get to the point where I believed recovery was possible. And that's when the idea for this podcast came about, because I started to come across recovery stories and I started to believe that recovery was possible. This podcast made me fully believe that recovery is possible. But then the next step is recovery is inevitable. So the first step is, can I recover? Then it's recovery is possible. Then it's recovery is inevitable. I fully believe that recovery is inevitable for everyone who's listening to this. I do. I honestly believe that it is. It's inevitable. It's just when. And it's okay for it to be slow. Someone messaged me and said, it's so nice to hear that, it's not been an overnight thing. It can be slow, but that doesn't mean you have to go through hell the whole time. I'm still recovering now, but I'm not going through hell. I'm not tormenting myself each day. The stuff I can find that in my daily life that is, truly rewarding and exciting for me. So the whole point is recovery is inevitable, not possible. It's inevitable. And that's an amazing, but I'm still not fully there, but I'm close. I'm closer than ever to that 100% of me believing that. I'm probably, I don't know. I don't like to put percentage on things, but like 85% maybe recovery is inevitable. No, maybe more. No, it's going to happen. I'm definitely more than that. But so just think about that. Where are you on that scale? Where are you on that scale? Where do you want to be? What is stopping you from being that? And it's all about, we talked about the environment. What are you exposing yourself to? Are you following Instagram accounts that wallow in chronic illness? Or are you following Instagram accounts that celebrate recovery stories, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What's next for me? For me, I'm at a weird stage now where I've kind of made improvement, but I don't think, and I've got exercise back in my life, but I need to add back in the side of things where I can calm my nervous system down through breath work, meditation. I want to do more like plant medicine stuff. So I'm really kind of like thinking about what's next for next year. And so I haven't figured that out yet. And as always, my approach is not perfect. And because of it's not perfect, that's fine. It also takes longer, but it is what it is. And yeah, that's kind of been trained. This episode has been a just my stream of consciousness coming out. I feel like it maybe hasn't been the best episode, but hey, hopefully you guys have got something from it. Maybe the next one, it'll be more of like an update one. I recorded this quite soon after recording the last episode. So hopefully there wasn't too many similarities. Hopefully you got something from it. I promise next time it'll be more of like a clear update. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, for watching. I'm going to drink the rest of my ice cold, horrible coffee now. And thank you guys. Have a great day.